eventually it would wear off. Similarly, if I had to pretend to be more masculine, whatever, it would wear off. So it's better to select somebody who is aligned to your levels of exchange between the masculine and feminine than the ones where you have to pretend. So I see, and I feel a bit bad because I see a lot of men, especially since the Andrew Tate movement, who are trying so hard to be more masculine. But the problem is it's not authentic. It's not coming naturally for you. So maybe you can lean into your more femininity instead of pushing for the more masculine. Just lean into who you truly are and then select wisely rather than trying to push to what you're not. So I would say that we all know where our balance lies. We all know roughly where we are. Try not to fake it till you make it. Instead, just embrace your level and look for a compatibility.
What are some of the other like prominent green flags in terms of having a partnership or relationship that lasts, and how we position ourselves, and when we start to get into a connection with somebody, and like what are some of the other things that you really see have like the possibilities to make a relationship thrive long term?
Perspective, I say, is a really important component of a long lasting relationship. And what I mean by that is having a partner who has the ability to view the same scenario from the perspective of their partner. If they can only see the world through their own lens and they are unable and really rigid to see how you might feel in a situation or how this situation might like impact you, they will become an impossible partner to resolve conflict with. They'll become an impossible partner to have a long lasting relationship with, and there'll be no compromise. But if you have a partner that we all see things naturally from our own egocentric perspective to begin with, but usually over time they can understand your perspective, over time they can understand your point of view. What it does is it leads to a balance and compromise. So I think somebody who has an inability to see their partner or people's perspective in general is a real red flag, whereas somebody who can do that quite naturally, it's a huge green flag because it then enables all the other traits that are required for a relationship, such as compassion, forgiveness, conflict resolution. It enables further traits. So really making sure you choose a partner who is able to see the world through both yours and his perspective. And as a result, they'll also respect you in your absence. If I don't have my partner's perspective, I will go do what I want when he's not around because it's like, oh, I don't care if he's there. But when you have a mentality where I understand this would upset them, I understand this would be disrespectful, you start to monitor your behavior in a way that would be respectful to them in their absence because you care about their perspective. So I'd say perspective is a really important thing to look for in a partner. I would say that another thing to really bear in mind when you're getting into relationships is just being very aware of your deal breakers. A lot of people will overlook their deal breakers because of the things that they like in the person. They might look a certain way, they might act a certain way, and as a result, they're overlooking their deal breakers. For whoever you are, let's say your deal breaker is loyalty, let's say another person's deal breaker is financial, another's is appearance, whatever it is. Whatever your deal breaker is, if you see signs of it appearing in this person, instead of begging for them to change, ask yourself, can I accept this deal breaker? Or if I can't accept this deal breaker, I should reduce my investment. But don't marry or be or invest in somebody that has all the deal breakers and then force them to change it or expect them to change it. Either manage your expectations or let them go, but don't commit to deal breakers.
I think there can often be this romanticization of someone's potential versus accepting and acknowledging what their real patterns are. So, in connection and meeting somebody, what do you see as the difference there, and how we can not just fall in love with the potential of who somebody can be, which of course is exciting to see what somebody can grow into, yet at the same time, someone's real patterns that are so ingrained, uh, unless they're devoted to the path of evolution, are unlikely to change deeper in partnership.
This happens to people who go into denial a lot. There are some people who just naturally go into denial with most things in life. And it might have been a childhood coping strategy. Maybe they had parents that were actually quite not nice people or a bit abusive, but because they might have had no alternative perspective, they had to believe their parents were perfect, and they had to believe their siblings are really good. Even though on this, there might be some objective negative issues with that parent. So what happens is when they meet somebody that they fall in love with, whatever their version of love means, what part of the love means is ignoring all of their problematic behavior and going straight into denial. And as a result, they will fall into love with their potential. And they'll use the word he's got potential. But really, what they're doing is they've created an image of who this person should be or is, and they've attached to that image, and they will deny reality at all costs to maintain that connection. I'll have clients where they've caught the woman cheating red-handed or the man cheating red-handed, and they'll still say things like, "Oh, but he would never do that." They'll still say she's not like that. It would have been. They still make excuses. There's no problem with making excuses if that's how you want to live. But then you have to just accept that the behavior that you caught them doing is going to continue. If you're falling in love with potential, what you're really doing is falling in love with your own delusions. And those delusions can exist in anybody. You might as well just choose a new person to experience those delusions with. But falling in love with potential is really, really setting yourself up for failure. It's better to just accept them for who they truly are rather than going into denial of who they've shown you who they are.
It can be a painful realization to see how you've been loving the perception you have of your partner versus actually connecting and loving with who they actually are in their core.
Is look, here's the thing. It's really soul destroying when you have this false perception of your partner and you find out they've got a whole secret life behind your back, and you can't believe they've duped you into this, and you can't believe they've hurt you like this. But I would say that when you fall in love with your potential imagination, the person that hurts you doesn't feel much guilt. And the reason why they don't feel much guilt is because they feel like you didn't take the time to get to know the real me. You didn't fall in love with the real me. You fell in love with your own imagination. And therefore I don't feel that guilty about hurting you because you think you fell in love with your own imagination. They almost feel like it's okay. They feel guilt free. So I think it's really important to make sure that whoever you've chosen to fall in love with, you remain curious and you ask the right questions and you make sure that you're falling in love with the true them. If you're not falling in love with the true them, you're falling in love with their mask, and they won't feel guilty if they let you down then, because you haven't, in their mind, they're going to see it as you haven't taken the time to get to know the real me. You don't love the real me. And therefore, I don't feel like I'm truly hurting you because you don't even know who I am. So it creates a power imbalance when you fall in love with your imagination because the person stops feeling guilty for hurting you.
Yeah, I really feel like we can't judge what we truly understand. Like if we understood what somebody's childhood was or past that led them to create the coping mechanisms, behavioral compensations, traumatic patterns that still go on to live in our control us in our day-to-day life, we would have compassion and understand for it. I just feel like we don't often prioritize clarity of mind to really see that and not just our own fantasization of what somebody is or really put them on a pedestal for their, and like their noble qualities without looking at the very real shadows there and like even acknowledging it. Cause it's an illusion to also go into partnership thinking you're going to go find somebody who's like healed all their stuff and is just like this perfect deity that you're going to come into partnership, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there needs to be a healthy acknowledgement of what those are and having those conversations earlier on than not, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to be realistic. People are going to be flawed. You just got to pick the person whose flaws you can cope with. People are going to be working on themselves throughout the relationship. Some people might not be working on themselves. You just pick the person that you can cope with their flaws with. No one's perfect, and you're not perfect. You also have to realize that you're going to go into this relationship with some of your own issues and concerns. I think there is an overemphasis sometimes, like, and I blame myself for this, where it's really talking about healing and you have to be healed and you go into a relationship. It's not so much that you have to be healed and perfect. You just have to know the key is not to be perfect. The key is to know that your partner is not responsible for every bad feeling you're having. Sometimes those bad feelings pre-existed before this partner even came into your life. You might be having an overreaction to their behavior simply because they're triggering something in you. Or you might find yourself forgiving a partner for a lot of abuse because you've been in the habit of that. So it's just understanding that it's not so much that your partner has to be perfect, but just understanding your reactions aren't entirely caused by this relationship and being aware of when they're triggered by this relationship and when they're triggered by a previous wound.